What is happening, my gurus? Thanks for hopping into another one of these videos with me. Today, we will be covering a few things from fundamentals to charts and a few other charts that we don't usually look at that I want to get a little bit deeper into because I think that it is starting to become a really interesting time, not only just for the bulls, but I think for everybody that really believes in crypto, really believes in this industry and believes in what we're trying to achieve here and the reason that we're all invested in all this cryptocurrency. So let's hop straight into it. As promised in the channel in Telegram, I did say that I was going to cover a few fundamentals and a few of the interesting sort of news brackets and a little bit of a macro overview on what's really going on here. So the first things first, I want to hop into something called the pipelines and the Nord Stream 2. For many of you that are following news, many of you that are following these sort of like macro outlooks and what's happening behind the scenes, guys, I can tell you now with absolute certainty, this whole war, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, Putin and whatever, is all, we're being shown a very, very small sliver of the picture, and we're being, led into public opinion, which is dictated by the mass media. And of course, none of that is probably going to be spot on, and none of that is going to be, close to the truth. So one thing I want to first do is explain what we're dealing with here and what we're talking about. Now, there is a pipeline. Russia is basically one of the largest producers of gas in the world. Around 40% of Europe's entire gas usage is provided to by Russia, and that is done through something called the Nord Stream, which is a pipeline that carries both oil and gas from Russia into Europe through Germany. Now, obviously, you can sort of see a pattern building up here. We've got Germany, we've got Russia, and the relationship between those two is something that does need to be addressed, because you can imagine that a country like America, an allied force like America, would want to make sure that a country like Germany, with both its economic and military powers, stays nice and cozied up to America as opposed to Russia. You've got to understand here that if Russia are going to pay Germany to allow them to bring gas into Europe through Germany, you have to understand that eventually, whether it's 5, 10, 20, 15 years down the line, America is going to be cut out of the equation, and there will be no need to build up any sort of treasuries around US stocks or the US dollar. To be honest, I mean, it's just not going to be necessary, and the gas and oil won't be backed by the dollar. As you guys know, when you hear on the radio or something, when they talk about Brent crude oil, those prices are always in dollars. Gas is always in dollars. If it's going to be a relationship that's going to exist between Russia and Germany directly, you can imagine that there will be no need for dollars in that equation. So that is why we are seeing this sort of war effort and the picture being painted of Putin and Russia and the invasion, specifically the way it has been. Because what's going to happen now is, as you know, for those of you that are following this, the Nord Stream 2 has been crushed. It's not happening anymore. The pipeline that was going to allow for faster production of gas, faster delivery of gas into Europe, is not happening anymore. They were announced bankrupt last night. And this, you can understand what a kind of a victory that is for America in this equation. So guys, it's just important to sort of, zoom out and look at what's really going on here. Is this really about Putin trying to annex another Crimea, or is this, what else is this about? Is this about him trying to, expand into Europe, etc.? So those are the things that need to be looked at. And I think more to the point, and over and above all, I think what's really important to understand here is that, this doom and gloom picture that's being painted is a very specific picture being painted to generate fear in the market. And I can almost put my hand on it. There's going to be no nuclear war. This whole invasion will be over in a couple of days, a couple of weeks maybe, and we will start seeing a return to normalcy eventually, especially both in the economies of the global market and specifically in the US economy as well. So I think it's very important to sort of take note of that and to not be caught up in this sort of like a fear cycle. It's a media cycle. It's generated, it's created, it is specific to the situation, and it is being done in order to create public opinion with a fear sentiment. So that's pretty much the situation in terms of the macro and what we're seeing, or what we're not being shown with regards to Russia, Germany, the US, this gas pipeline situation. So for those of you that didn't know about it, that's the full picture. And that's about it. And I think now what would now be important to talk about is what's going to happen with the Fed? What's going to happen with this hike rate? What's going to happen with the interest rates and the hike that we've been promised for so long in the 50 BPS range? Now, historically, as I have told you in previous videos, historically, a hike rate has not been doom and gloom for the economy. It does not always mean it's the end of the road for the economy and that we will see downturn, bear markets, recessions, etc. It isn't always doom and gloom. Of course, hike rates inside of a war, inside of bad economy, inside of a fear-based economy, yes, that can have a massive corrective impact, but I do not think that it's going to be a massive correction in terms of a 50, 60, 70, 80% correction. We'd probably be looking at a 20 to 30% correction off the back of that if they do hike the rates. However, now that we're seeing what we're seeing, it's very possible that Jerome Powell will stand up in the meeting on the 15th or 16th of March. I will get back to you with the exact date and time. And it's a very good chance that he is going to turn around and say, right, guys, we cannot increase rates at this time. We have a war effort to support. We've got to be economically prepared in the event of war, blah, blah, blah. You guys can see the picture. It's an age-old story. And it's very possible that they may not hike the rates. If they don't, I can tell you now that we are going to see potentially one of the more bullish spikes we've seen in recent years for both crypto, both stocks, and everything around that. I mean, I think the markets would pump off the back of news like that. My only issue with that is that it would effectively be kicking the can down the road, as we know and have discussed many, many, many times. What they're doing by printing more money, what they're doing by not tapering off inflation, is that they are kicking this can down the road, and they are creating a massive problem that can and potentially will result in something along the lines of the Great Depression, where a lot of the first world will step up, the third world will step completely down, and there will be nothing in between. It will be quite a devastating situation, and a lot of the first world would actually become third world in the event of that. But I don't see it happening. I really don't, guys. I think at the end of the day, what we have to just acknowledge is that these people love making money more than they love winning, and if they're going to crash the economy by whatever they do, whether it's hiking the rates, kicking the can down the road, etc., these things are going to result in them losing money. So I don't see how that would be allowed to happen, especially now that we've reached a point where the market is being completely manipulated, completely controlled, completely manipulated. It is not a free market anymore by any stretch of the imagination. So I think it's prudent for us to sort of swim with the whales, keep up to date with the news. I'm going to keep adding these news segments into the beginning of the videos, and then that's the best way to sort of trade the market, is to be aware of the macro, see what's going on, and then trade accordingly. Now let's hop into the charts. In fact, before we look at this, I actually am going to open up the big chart, and let's move into a nice high time frame. Let's see what the monthly is doing, seeing as though we did get a massive monthly closure yesterday, of course. Today being, or sorry, not yesterday, but the day before, we would have seen the new monthly candle print. Now, I'm just going to quickly just move this indicator out. Let's just delete that, and let's have a look at what we're seeing here. So, I mean, this is one beautiful monthly candle. It was a massive, massive candle for us to print off the back of these three red candles, and now we can see that we could be looking at a reversal. Let me just move this so we can actually see the candle quite nicely. You can see that it's been sort of this type of thing, which follows off from the M that we had seen. So you've got this M here, and now it's probably going to look at putting in a W. So that's pretty much what we're looking at in the higher time frame. It is fantastic news for us. The only thing that can really get in the way of us succeeding here is going to be it will essentially be the advent of how Russia is or isn't going to adopt Bitcoin. And what I mean by that is the following. If Russia goes ahead and adopts Bitcoin as their national currency, they move into it as tender so that people can get money in and out of the country, because, as you know, they've been blocked off with the SWIFT payment system. For those who do not know, SWIFT is a messaging system that the banks use in order to function international transfers. So what that means is a South African bank, someone in South Africa wants to send money to England. The South African bank will then message England to say, this person has transferred X amount of money to you guys, and that message will begin the processing system to verify and authenticate these transfers that happen between banks all over the world. Now, it is a Belgian company. They run in the EU. It's an EU-based company, SWIFT, and they are easily in control of the global money trade. Now, all of the countries in the world have all obviously moved to sanction Russia and ban them from the SWIFT system. The Belgians have not agreed just as yet. I think it would be a very strong political statement to take from Belgium, who are usually quite neutral. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But one thing I can tell you is that if they are going to ban Russia from the SWIFT system, Russia will be forced to buy Bitcoin. They will be forced to they already have Bitcoin, to be honest. I know that they've been collecting Bitcoin since 2014, the Russian government, which goes to show you how long this plan may have been in the works for. But if they adopt Bitcoin, if they move into it as legal tender, what we could see is a global global descent towards Bitcoin and towards crypto, and that might be damaging for the brand, let's say it like that. Of course, it'll never be damaging to the technology. The technology is completely agnostic. It doesn't take sides. And that's the beautiful thing about crypto, is that people are now seeing the value of having your finances in your hands and in your control. So a lot to be said around that area. Going to be really interesting to see how it happens and how it pans out. But let's quickly take a look at different timeframes in Bitcoin. Guys, again, we chart Bitcoin simply because everything in crypto follows Bitcoin. It's as simple as that. There's no two ways about it. You don't have to sit and break your head about it. For those that are interested in understanding the relationship between Bitcoin and the rest of the cryptos, please do me a favor and search for Satoshis and search for Satoshi price in our channel, and you will see many write-ups come up about what the relationship is between altcoins and Bitcoins and why it would make sense for us to only chart Bitcoin at this stage of the game. Cool. So we're seeing, obviously, here we're looking at the weekly the weekly time frame. I mean, this is printing an absolute weekly bomber, the likes of which we haven't seen since, sort of these areas here, these massive bullish structures as well, which is so fantastic. Sorry about that. I actually had something wrong there. These massive candles here, super, super awesome. I think these are what led us into Pumptober as well, which is quite fantastic. And as you can see, these three massive bullish weekly candles do tend to precede the beginning of a hike towards the all-time high. So I will be very, very interested to see how that happens. I'd love to see us put in another 3 here. Unfortunately, 58 is looking at as the top local zone. I do believe that we could probably turn around from 58 and come back down. That would mean something like, maybe something like that. Also not a travesty. It would probably hike the higher low trend line, which would be very, very bullish for Bitcoin as well. So I think all in all, we are looking at a very bullish scenario for Bitcoin here. Obviously, it's very fundamental dependent, and it is going to depend on how things pan out with Russia, the nuclear threat, and China, and the whole myriad of things. And of course, more than anything else, it is going to absolutely depend on what happens with the Fed meeting in 2 weeks from now. So looking at the intraday chart, guys, I just want to remind everybody, small little flex, but this green path had been with you guys from the 24th of Feb when we were at the bottom of this move. You guys can go back to the charts and see it. So I'm really happy to see this playing out. I'm really happy to see that we could be actually putting in the pattern that I'm seeing, which is the inverse head and shoulders. If we do get that inverse head and shoulders, then wow, we are going to see a massive, massive, massive bullish spike of Bitcoin, in my humble opinion. And imagine if it actually times out that we see this retest over here, which would be something like that, and then up and out. Or, to be honest, I mean, if the 15th or the 16th of March is going to be that meeting, you can imagine that if we see something like this, and then a retest here on the 15th, and then on the 15th they announce that they don't hike the rates, I can tell you now we're going to see some absolutely epic and volatile moves in Bitcoin. So my eyes will be on that, of course. And then, sorry, I just don't want to make this too long of a video. I just want to quickly wrap up by going through some dominance here. You can see that dominance is obviously hitting a lot of resistance at the top here. It's really nice to see that it's going to be coming back down, which should give Alta a bit of room to move. You saw what Alta were doing yesterday when Bitcoin was pumping, and of course the day before. So really, really nice to see, and it's good to see that these are all on the recovery. You can absolutely see that dominance was fully rejected from up here, fully rejected from the top of that resistance, and it's coming back down to test and play with this trend line again. So that is quite fantastic to see. I'm really happy to see that, because it means that more money is moving into Bitcoin, whether it means that people are buying it for Ukraine or people are buying it for Russia or whatever. It's a good case to be made for what Bitcoin can do for economies in these sort of times. But again, I am cautious, because we could still have this issue where the sentiment around Bitcoin completely changes, the sentiment around crypto completely changes, if the Russians then sort of use it to fund their war effort. And then lastly, just looking at sort of the stock indices, the SPY. Sort of what was beautiful here was that the Bitcoin pump that we saw wasn't SPY related. It wasn't off the back of the stock market. It was truly Bitcoin doing its own thing in a time of mass distraction, which is quite fantastic. So that's what we're looking at over here. The SPY is not looking too bad. We could probably see the stock market come back to these lows to carry on up there. I'd be open to see what happens over there, and you will obviously check out the NASDAQ as well, which saw some incredible moves off the back of the support here. It didn't really come back down to the support, unfortunately, which would have probably been nice, and it will probably mean that it could want to come back to test, but I think time will tell, and it's going to see how the market reacts to the news, and the market reacts to the upcoming situation, especially with the Fed and all that. So my gurus, as you guys know, if you are enjoying this content and you're keen for me to keep putting it out, please do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And of course, share this out with friends and family that are interested in crypto and macro fundamentals as well. For those that are interested in the Equal AMA, I am looking at tomorrow night potentially for that. Tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Otherwise, we can do Monday at 6 p.m. So please let me know who's keen for that. I will be putting a notice into the Telegram channel as well, so we can all come together and decide what works best. Otherwise, have a fantastic week, my gurus. It's so good to be back here for you guys, and I'll be in the channel for anyone who has any questions. Have a good one.